The dilemma of whether to kill Paarthurnax in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim quickly became one of the game's most famous moral choices, and yet it's also one that the player base almost overwhelmingly agrees on the correct course of action. At its core, it asks an important ethical question: can someone who did great evil ever truly change, and if they do they still deserve punishment? It pits justice and accountability against redemption and forgiveness, with themes of morality, loyalty, and the complexity of good versus evil and how perspective shapes those lines. Representing opposing views on this decision are two important groups who aid the Dragonborn in his quest to defeat Alduin, the Blades and the Greybeards. So how come the majority of the player base agreed that Paarthurnax deserved to live? Why ultimately did this become an easy decision to make? Did we sleep on the Blades' reasoning and the stance they took? In this video I'll aim to present the cases for and against this decision, but first let's recap on the key players here, the ancient history of Skyrim, Paarthurnax, Delphine, the Blades, and ultimately why the life of this dragon is brought into question in the first place. To begin, we must travel back to the Merethic era. In the Elder Scrolls lore, this era is characterised by the rise and fall of the dragon cult in Skyrim, a period where dragons and their dragon priests ruled over the human population. The era began almost 7,000 years before events of Skyrim and lasted for a total of 2,500 years. During the later Merethic period, Ysgramor and his followers settled in Skyrim, and with them they brought the religion of Atmora. Known as the Dragon Cult, the followers of this religion worshipped numerous animal totems: the hawk, wolf, snake, moth, owl, whale, bear, fox, and most importantly the dragon. The ancient Nords regarded the dragon as head of their pantheon, and considering dragons existed in vast numbers across Tamriel and Atmora, it would eventually change into outright worship of living dragons, Alduin being chief among them. The dragons embraced their role as god kings over the Nords, but they created a hierarchy. Rather than deal with the actual ruling themselves, they granted small amounts of power to dragon priests, in exchange for their obedience. In turn, the priests ruled over men as equals to kings. It was a time of immense cruelty. The system of rule was corrupt, characterised by sacrifices of tribute to the dragons. The priests ruled with an iron fist, and the population were no better than slaves. The Nords eventually rebelled against the cruelty of Alduin, which started the Dragon War, a war they would eventually win, which brought an end to the Merethic era. What about Paarthurnax? Paarthurnax, meaning ambition, overlord, cruelty in the dragon tongue, is an ancient dragon and brother to Alduin. Brother in the sense that they are all children of Akatosh, rather than direct family. He is often regarded as second only to Alduin in terms of power, and he served as his lieutenant during the Dragon War in the Merethic era, during which he was said to have committed and witnessed unspeakable atrocities against mankind. The early stages of the Dragon War were a bloodbath. The Nords were woefully outmatched and easily defeated by the dragons and their voice. Paarthurnax, pitied man, and along with several other dragons, betrayed Alduin by teaching mankind to use the Thu'um, the dragon shout. Mankind were able to use this power against the dragons, and they eventually prevailed, banishing Alduin from Mundus. So where do the Blades come in? The story of the Blades begins with the Akaviri invasion of Tamriel during the First Era. After the invading Akaviri forces had fought through Skyrim and reached the Pale Pass, they were met by Rimmon Cyrodiil and his forces. Accounts state that after hearing the Emperor's voice or dragon shout, the Akaviri forces knelt and swore fealty to him, whom they called Dragonborn. They would become known as the Dragon Guard, a group that existed during the First and Second Era, whose primary task was to hunt down and slay any remaining dragons whom had got into hiding. This group later formed the order that is now known as the Blades. Although now a shadow of their former selves due to the events of the Oblivion Crisis and the Great War, which saw their numbers rapidly decline, the return of Alduin and the Dragon Crisis has seen the Blades in Skyrim take on their ancient duty of their predecessors and begin hunting dragons again, led by their Grandmaster in hiding, Delphine. And this is where the Paarthurnax dilemma begins. Delphine and the Blades eventually learn of Paarthurnax's existence and that he, in their words, is being protected by the Greybeards. Paarthurnax must die. Or must he? First, let's examine the case presented by Delphine and the Blades. Ultimately, this is about justice for his crimes. Paarthurnax was a willing lieutenant of Alduin during the Dragon War, directly responsible for oppressing and slaughtering humans. Many of the ancient Nords who suffered under his rule are long dead, but the Blades' view on this is justice is timeless, especially for war crimes on that scale. As Delphine says, he's not just any dragon, he was the right hand of Alduin. He committed atrocities so infamous they are still remembered thousands of years later. It's also about precedent and principle. Letting Paarthurnax live might set a dangerous precedent, that great evil can be overlooked if followed by good deeds. The Blade's argument is that no one is above accountability, especially not being as powerful as a dragon. As Esbern says, Paarthurnax's later deeds do not expiate his crimes. Then there is the potential threat of allowing a being so powerful to live. Despite his peaceful demeanour, Paarthurnax is still a dragon, a creature born from domination and destruction. Dragons are inherently dangerous, and there is a risk he could revert to his old nature, especially with Alduin gone and no one to oppose him. As Delphine says, he helped Alduin enslave our ancestors. He may have betrayed Alduin in the end, but that makes him worse, not better. We can't afford to give Paarthurnax the opportunity to betray us in turn. This particular argument Paarthurnax himself even adds weight to in conversation with the Dragonborn on more than one occasion. He says, "We were made to dominate, this will to power is in our blood." He also admits, "No day goes by where I'm not tempted to return to my inborn nature." And finally, it is always wise to mistrust a Dover. Finally, there is the Blade's code. The Blades are dragon slayers by tradition and duty. To spare one, especially Alduin's second in command, is undoubtedly seen as betraying their mission. Their credibility and purpose would be undermined if they begin making exceptions. As Delphine says, "Until he's dead, well, I'm sorry, but we would dishonour our oaths as Blades if we continue to help you." So justice and accountability. What about the arguments for allowing Paarthurnax to live? Firstly, there is the theme of redemption and change. Paarthurnax chose to reject Alduin's tyranny and taught the Thu'um to mortals. This turned the tide in the Dragon War in a way that is hard to see would have been possible otherwise. He now lives in isolation and meditation, and although he freely admits the struggle to subdue his instincts is ever present, he preaches peace. Secondly, the importance of his role in defeating Alduin a second time. Without Paarthurnax's guidance, would the Dragonborn have mastered the voice? Would they have located the Elder Scroll in time? Learned Dragonrend? Located crucial allies? If so, would it have been in time? Paarthurnax played a crucial role in stopping the end of days. To kill him after his help is morally questionable and arguably dishonourable. Thirdly, there is the loss of support from the Greybeards. Arguably, the loss in support of the Blades is no great loss at all. Their importance in Tamriel is gone, and the Order more or less wiped out. The Greybeards to the Dragonborn arguably should carry much more importance. Pacifists and spiritual leaders of the Way of the Voice, they can offer the Dragonborn far more guidance. Killing Paarthurnax severs all ties with them, and you lose a valuable philosophical and spiritual alliance. There is also the moral hypocrisy of the decision. The Blade's insistence on punishment ignores any ideas of personal growth and change, which the Dragonborn themselves may embody. Delphine and Esbern themselves consistently engage in questionable activities like manipulating politics and espionage, yet expect absolution for themselves because in their eyes they are on the right side of history. The curiosity of perspective on good versus evil which I mentioned in my introduction. And lastly, there is a philosophical perspective of what Skyrim the game means. Paarthurnax embodies one of its central themes, the struggle between fate and free will, between one's nature and one's choices. Am I doing this because I want to, or simply fulfilling a prophecy? Choosing whether to kill him is a test of the Dragonborn's own values. Are they an agent of vengeance and justice, or wisdom and mercy? Ultimately, the choice to kill Paarthurnax reflects the Dragonborn's worldview. Killing him would suggest a belief in justice as an absolute, with no redemption for past crimes. But if you spare him, and you recognise the potential for change even in the darkest hearts, neither choice is presented as clearly right or wrong, which is what gives it such emotional weight in Skyrim's narrative. Or at least that's what it should do, but ultimately, far more of us lean towards sparing him. So where did my own thought process lead? I, probably like many other players, did kill Paarthurnax on one playthrough, more just to say I tried it, curiosity, and I can safely say I wasn't happy with that decision, and I haven't repeated it since. I've deliberately avoided the elephant in the room so far, which is Delphine. Oh Delphine, Delphine. If only you could have asked me nicely, hey? Am I right? So much of this decision seems to boil down to that annoying Skyrim Karen rubbed me up the wrong way, so I'm not doing her bidding. Screw her. And although that has become somewhat of a meme, it is rooted in the truth. Delphine is, admittedly, quite dislikable, isn't she? I mean, I get it. If an ancient being returned with the power to devour souls and end the world as we know it, and I was one of the last remaining members of an ancient order sworn to kill these beings, I'd probably be drinking my mead with a side of hysteria as well. She's desperate and she's trying to leverage all that she can. But would it hurt you to say please, just once? I didn't want to purely leave it at that though, so I spent some time reflecting on this decision, and I came to the same conclusion as I did beforehand. Paarthurnax deserves to live. I've mentioned it in the history, but not really pressed it home as of yet, but let us consider the time frame at present here. This is magnified in Paarthurnax because he is a dragon, an immortal being of a higher existence. As previously discussed, the rule of Alduin happened in Tamriel's Merethic era. That means Paarthurnax has exiled himself, meditated, guided others, led the Greybeards and taught the way of the voice for over 4,500 years. If this was Earth, Paarthurnax exiled himself when the pharaohs of ancient Egypt were in the process of constructing the pyramids of Giza. In my native England, Stonehenge was being constructed by the Neolithic Britons. It was 2.5 millennia before Jesus of Nazareth was born, and we're still approximately 4,200 years away from the founding of the United States. It is an incredibly long amount of time, and it is likely over this time he has aided far more souls than he has actively harmed. It's important to context as well. Paarthurnax was born into this way of life. He was created by Akatosh for that sole purpose, as a dove, in his image, to rule. It would have been all he ever knew and felt, and he still realised he was on the wrong side. That is pretty powerful. We're warned not to trust him, even by himself, and he states the thirst for dominance is ever present in a dove. Immediately after Alduin is defeated, if he is still alive, we see firsthand what is likely to be one of the biggest tests of this thirst. With Alduin gone, a huge power vacuum exists, and he's technically the most powerful dove left. What does Paarthurnax do? He uses his drive for dominance as a force for good on his fellow dragons, enforcing pacifism, the way of the voice, preaching for mortals and dragons to coexist peacefully. His deeds carry immense significance. He didn't just speak out against Alduin and exile himself, he worked directly with the goddess Kine to do it. In teaching the ancient Nords the Thu'um, he gave them the necessary tools to overthrow the oppressive rule of the Dove and Dragon cult. Kine is worshipped as the mother of the Nords, and the goddess who guides souls to Sovngarde. If you remember, there are 10 stone tablets lining the 7,000 steps up to High Hrothgar. Well, Emblem 4 on the 7,000 steps reads, Kine called on Paarthurnax, who pitied man. Together they taught men to use the voice, then Dragon War raged, dragon against tongue. This is a pretty big deal. The mother of Nords and Paarthurnax overthrowing the oppression is foundational to what Nordic culture is today. Their cultural identity has been shaped directly by his actions. Paarthurnax, despite his transgression, is immortalised and revered on these 7,000 steps. This is a place of great importance to Nords, a place where many seek pilgrimage, just as in the real world Christians pilgrimage to places like Lourdes or Fatima. I've mentioned a few times that the case for Paarthurnax is rooted in the idea of redemption and forgiveness. To draw on the Christian faith again, there are so many examples in Christianity of sinners who ultimately saw profound conversion and were canonised. St. Paul, St. Mary Magdalene, St. Augustine to name but a few. It's deeply rooted in Christianity the acts of repentance and forgiveness of past transgressions. If Paarthurnax deserves to die, despite everything he has done over the past 4,500 years, well, what does that say about the rest of us? The Blades and Delphine's argument just wasn't strong enough. She wants justice for all those people who died at the hands of the dragons, and that is a noble cause, but it was 4,500 years ago. No one is alive who suffered through that. It's less justice, more fulfillment of an ancient grudged master's betrayal of our oaths to the Blades, and I could never shake the idea that this felt somewhat personal to her. She obviously and overtly disliked the Greybeards. Killing Paarthurnax was a way to get to them. And that's where I'll end this video. Let me know your thoughts on this decision. Do you save Paarthurnax like me, or do you side with the Blades? Are there any points you think I missed either for or against? I'm Mike the Gaming Dad, and I'll leave you with a quote from Paarthurnax.
What is better, to be born good, or to overcome your evil nature through great effort?